Hello, James here, and we're off to Fully Charged Live again this year, and this time I am going to be driving the car with the new BMS update. So we're going to see what difference we get this time with the same journey. I'm going to make the same stops and I'm going to do the same sort of charges. I'll go into the reasons why, because I'm running a little late, so I want to set off. We're already roughly about 7 minutes behind what we were last time. So I just want to try and get the timing and see if we can go a little bit quicker. Just a quick sort of summary of what I have set up. I am in the Shell garage. It is 1:37 for petrol. So I've not been that well the last few days, so I've got my own sandwiches and drinks and stuff with us this time. And I basically feel like I'm actually one phone away from being a Hong Kong taxi. I don't know why the Hong Kong taxi drivers need 3 phones, but they do. Right, we're going to head off now. We are roughly about 10 minutes behind from last year. We are having great weather here. I'm just going to do some final checks. Right, so we got flight check plan. We have eco on, e-pedal off, reset all trips, flaps down. Definitely flaps down, camera, gimbal, laptop, change of clothes, mini fridge, very important, 2 mobile phones, and a lot of gear and dangly wires. Right, we're all set to go. So the difference between this time and last is we have the new BMS update on this Leaf compared to the old 5SH2A. We've got the 5SH2C update at the moment, and that has changed the way the car charges. We had that issue last year where the charge rate would slow down on consecutive charging on rapid chargers. We shouldn't have as much issue this time, so I just want to do a like-for-like comparison of drive and charge. So we're on the A1 now, and we're heading from Livingston to Milton Keynes for the Fully Charged Live tomorrow, and the overall distance is 376 miles roughly, and we are going to cover this with the new BMS update. Last year I did 4 stops on the way, every 70 mile hop. I am going to do the exact same technique for this year for a few reasons. One, you can't change the laws of physics, so you have to go with the battery, because even though it's got the new update and you're able to charge faster at a higher temperature, the temperature will still increase the same as it would before. The car doesn't have any new hardware to keep the vehicle cool, so that side of stuff, when I'm driving and when I'm charging, all that should still be the same as before, but towards the top end is where it differs. So, you know, the equilibrium of the battery temperature was about 38 degrees, so once we hit that, then I will change the game plan a little. The main difference this year, instead of going the Japanese speed limit of 100 kilometers, I'm going to go for 110, which is roughly about 65 miles an hour instead of 62, which I did last year. And I'm going to try and keep that up until the car battery hits about 38 degrees centigrade, because that's kind of the equilibrium of when, you know, when you're doing 62, the battery kind of stays stable at that point, and I want to try and keep the battery roughly about that sort of temperature between charges. If we're lucky, we should hopefully, the slowest charge speed we should get is about 32 kilowatts, and judging from the chart you can see here, there's a big difference in the sort of like tapering of the charging depending on the battery temperature, and it seems a lot higher this time. So even at 44 degrees centigrade, we're talking about 32 kilowatts of charging speed, and that's like 3/4 of the initial charge speed of when the battery is at the optimum temperature, which is still a decent speed. If you compare it to what we were pulling last time without the update, we were down to about 22, 23 kilowatts, so that's like half the charge speed, and that made a big difference. That kind of put a bit of a dampener when you see the charge speed go that low. So hopefully we won't actually reach below 32 kilowatts on charge speed today. The difference also is today we head off and the temperature was 14 degrees centigrade for the battery. Last year it was 17, so we're at a slight advantage there. The disadvantage this year is we've got side wind of about 15 miles an hour. Last year we had tailwind, which helped push us along, so that was a bit of a benefit. So they kind of outweigh themselves, and the overall ambient temperature this year's trip, we're at roughly 16 degrees. I think we're 4 degrees above what we were last year, and I think it was probably roughly about the same actually. So this trip should be fairly similar towards last year, except for I'm going to stay at 65 miles an hour. So we're going to be hitting the same stops as we did last time, which is Berwick upon Tweed. Then we're going to go to the service station in Newcastle, and we're off to Wetherby as well, my favourite stop, and then we're off to Troll Services. So that's the 4 stops that we're going to, and you know, might not charge as long as we need to this time, depending on how the charge rate goes of the car. And we're hoping to do a little bit better than last year, which was 10 hours and 30 minutes roughly, or 35 minutes. So we'll see if we can get to Milton Keynes before 8 o'clock this year, going at 65. But until then, I'm just going to listen to my favourite podcast recently, which is Martin from EV News Daily.
On show 488, Tesla's website gets overwhelmed, clean energy for Rhode Island, and an electric Lotus. 87 previous shows sitting in the archive right now. But if you subscribe, you get the new ones first and free and automatically, and we all love stuff for free, and there's no obligation to do the Patreon thing with this podcast, so if you want to, enjoy the podcast as long as you want for free. I'll be here making it. And if you want to catch up on the socials, search EV News Daily. Bloomin' heck, 24 minutes. I've waffled today. I'm going to bugger off now. Have a wonderful day. I'll catch you tomorrow. Remember, there's no such thing as a bloomin' well self-charging hybrid.
We are about 8.9 miles away from Berwick, and we have covered 65.5 miles. The battery temperature is 21.6 degrees centigrade. That's a little bit higher than it was last year. I think we reached Berwick at 19 degrees. We were going slower, and we had actually a little bit more traffic than we had today. So that will account for the higher temperature, including we don't have a tailwind today, we've got a side wind. So all those little things factor into the battery temperatures just being a little bit higher. Other than that, nothing to really worry about. The current battery charge is at 53%. So I don't think we'll probably stay the full 30 minutes here at Berwick. It doesn't seem like we need it. So let's have a quick chat about state of health of the battery. After 1 year of ownership, it actually dropped to 94.78%, and it's not really that bad. We had, if you look at the chart here, you'll see that we had this drop of roughly about 2%, and that was over winter when the temperature plummeted to about, I think it ended up being about -5, -10 degrees centigrade, and I had to use the car a bit. So for that week, you see it just tanks down, but it's kind of stabilised again, and it's not really changed that much. If we look at the state of health now, the battery state of health is at 94.21%, so it's not really dropped that much from before, maybe 0.5%. So I'm thinking that the state of health of the battery actually looks really good for the car, especially now that I've done 22,000 miles on it, and we have done rapid charges, 285 rapid or quick charging, and for the fast charging at home it says 423, but I wouldn't go off that, because there's a few things on that with solar panels and the Zappy charger, because I had it plugged in, and every time the sun goes in and out and it gets and the solar gets cut out, it will count that as one charge, and when it kicks back in again. So you know, I had maybe, it's probably like off by about 200, so I'd probably half that. So it's probably, I've probably done roughly about the same amount of level 1, level 2 charging. The other thing with the state of health of the battery being at 94.21% is last year about this time, the most I've topped the car up on the battery remaining when it's at 100% was about 37.5. I think the highest I've seen was 38 when it's brand new, and now it has dropped down to about 36.7. So we lost about 1 kilowatt hour of the total battery that's usable. So we probably lost about 3 or 4 miles of range, most likely 4 miles of range, compared to what we had at the beginning of the year, or the beginning of last year, should I say, when the car was new. So it's not really that much range drop. I've not really noticed any major differences. So that's the update. We should be heading to the charge point pretty shortly. We're going to head into Berwick now and charge up for a little bit. Okay, so we made it to the charge point at Berwick. We're at 22.2 degrees centigrade on the battery. Battery is at 48%, which is fairly high actually. Okay, we'll probably just top up here till we get to about 85% before we hit the road. Right, so the car is charging up nicely, 44 kilowatts of charge speed, which is decent. We're already at 50%. And what else do we need to check? Oh yeah, I got a flight check plan. Lease by screenshot, done that. Lease by screenshot again.
On show 485, VW and Minis seen naked.
Oh, news again. Right, we're going to pause that. Right, lease by, new screenshot, 22.2 it was on the temperature. I'm just going to turn the car off for now. Let that go. Yeah, what else can we talk about? There must be loads, because we've got another 4.5 hours in the car. Right, oh yeah, I might as well talk about some of the stuff that I got. So, 2 phones. And I've got the Humix. I actually bought one with my own money this time. All the money I made from YouTube I've blown on one of these because it was on sale for £7 on Amazon. I'll put a link below. They're really good, and that's the second one that I've got. The other thing that I've got is this, which is pretty interesting, which is Best Tech, and it's a 3-pin plug. It uses man, I'm rubbish at this product review stuff here. So it uses a cigarette lighter, but it's got 4 USBs and it's got 2 3-pin plugs. And the reason for that is I'm running the mini fridge, and I don't want to leave it at the back of the car because it's quite loud, the fan, so I'll put it in the boot instead. And with this, I can actually plug it in here and have the extension cable to keep that cool box running, to keep stuff cool. Not only that, I can actually, this is 200 watts of power inverter, and my laptop is, I think, is about 170 watts. So this actually has enough power to power it. Only just got it, so it seems to be working just fine, and there doesn't seem to be any issues. So we're 17 minutes into the charge at the moment, and we're pulling 24 kilowatts, and with the temperatures 30.4 degrees, and that kind of coincides with my battery chart from last year, which we were charging at roughly about 50%, weren't we? So, you know, we stay for 40 minutes, we'll hit 95%, but we don't really want to do that, and that's at 7.5 degrees centigrade. So that's roughly what we got. We've gained 8 degrees centigrade so far, which is good. It's better than putting in 20 degrees with a low state of charge. Like I said, you can't change the laws of physics. The way the car charges, it will still be the same. Still the same amount of heat that it pulls in. And so in that terms, nothing's changed apart from the battery management system will let you charge at a higher rate, at a higher temperature. That is the only difference. So this is why we're still keeping the same game plan as we did last year. I know some of you might want to not do this and just want to get in the car and drive. We will be doing that on the way back to Scotland on Sunday. So we'll be able to find out from there when I'm just going to wing it and get down to about 20% on the battery and then charge up, and then we'll see what happens, how long before the rapidgate starts to kick in, if it does, which I'm sure it will do, especially if you're not going to really plan that. I mean, I planned a trip before to Manchester, and that was 220 miles, and I don't really have a problem. I think the slowest charge rate I got was 38 kilowatts, and the battery was quite toasty by that point. It was about 40 degrees. It's much higher than what it would be with using the technique that I am at the moment from last year. So we're just leaving Berwick now, and we're up to 82% on the battery level. We've got 130 mile range. We only need to cover the next 70 to 80 miles before we reach Newcastle. The battery temperature was at 30.4 degrees, and now with this slow driving through Berwick, we are down to 30.1. So it's cooling down. The battery's cooling down anyway by itself without taking that 3-minute break for this. I still don't think you really need it. I mean, we charged for an extra 10 minutes last time, and the battery temperature was at 30.6. It's been roughly about the same. So even if I charge for that next 10 minutes, I don't think I would put on that much more heat compared to last year. So everything's running as expected. I'm still going to try and hit 65, but I'll have to do 60 because it's mostly 60 zones from here till before we reach Newcastle. So we're gonna hit the road, and I'm gonna give you guys an update once we get closer to Newcastle. So that's the car charging now. So we're going to see what happens in 30 minutes and see how much extra state of charge we get. We want to try and potentially reach 85% at least. So we might have to stay that tiny little bit longer because we skipped the first 10 minutes. But we'll find out once the time's up. Before I forget, on the checklist it says I need to check the charging speed and the battery temperature. So it's 33 degrees, it's charging at 38 kilowatts. So at 33, See, we are getting 38. Right, so I'm just filling this chart. So it's still a little bit quicker before the update, but now that we've got the update, it's charging that little bit quicker at this temperature. So we'll see what happens. Maybe that is right. Right, so we're actually up to 42.6 degrees centigrade. So it's pretty much bang on what I said before. The battery temperature on here is about 3/4 of the way up, so we're still looking good. I am going to go and stop the charge because we're at 85% and we're over our 30 minutes on charge. Actually, I need to use my phone now, don't I? Right, we're going to stay here for maybe 3 minutes and hopefully we can drop the temperature down by a couple of degrees. And hopefully get the temperature down a little bit. So this is the first time I'm using the 3 to 5 minute wait between charging. Let's have a look compared to last year. I mean, if we did that at the start, we would have wasted a little bit more time, but we probably got the temperature down a couple of degrees. So I reckon if we kept to the original, what we did last year, it would be pretty much the same. Washington, after charging last year, was 38.2 degrees centigrade. This year was 42. So going that little bit quicker and not stopping the charge, or stopping after and before charging, increase the battery temperature by 4 degrees, or just over 4 degrees centigrade this year. So I am hoping that we can keep the battery temperature around 40 degrees or lower once we get to Wetherby station. It was 37 last year, so it did drop down a bit, but we were going a little bit slower last year. So I am expecting it to be pretty much the same, but the only difference would be how the tapering happens and how much extra heat the car will produce. So the next two stops, Wetherby and Nottingham, is going to be the most interesting out of this. The first two is practically the same as last year, so there's no real difference in charging speed. So we're going to set off in about 2 minutes. We'll check the temperature. I might even stay for an extra 2 after that. And we'll see what happens. I'll just sort myself out a little bit. Remove my EVA Scotland time card. We are back at 1:45, it says. And we are. So actually, what time did we leave last year at? So last year, we left Washington services at 2 o'clock. What's the time now? 1:46. So we're still 10 minutes, or at least, well, actually 14 minutes ahead of schedule. So by the time we do this stop, we're talking about 13 minutes. So we're almost there. I'm just going to check the temperature of the car, of the battery. Right. The spy on. Okay, so we're dropped to 41.9 degrees centigrade now, so it has come down a bit. So far this trip compared to last year, it seems I'm going that little bit quicker. There's a little bit less to worry about, and I feel like doing 65 I can actually overtake things like these air liquid E carbon dioxide lorries and trucks and things, which is quite nice. Makes a bit of a change rather than drafting behind them last year. I feel like I'm actually progressing much quicker as well in time. So far we are 15 minutes above our ETA from last year, or actual, not ETA, but actual time from last year. So we got to Wetherby at 3:35, so let's find out what time we get there today. So now the car's charging. It's charging at 38 kilowatts, and the temperature of the car was about 39.5 degrees. So that is, if I jot this down, it seems to be 38 across the board on the charge rate. What are we at? So we'll call it 40 degrees, yeah? 38. So after 40 degrees it'll start to taper quite heavily, but between that it seems to be pretty stable, so we should be pulling a good charge. The only thing I'm worried about is the temperature. Like I said, I think if we're going to pull another 10 degrees centigrade, we're talking about 49 degrees C, but like I said, we're going to find out how much it dissipates when we travel down at 65 miles an hour. Due to some technical issues, I have lost the audio for the rest of the trip. Namely, that I forgot to turn on the mic because it's got an on and off switch. It's a new one that I got. So I'll have to narrate the rest of the video along with you guys while I watch it. So I've still got the dash cam, so it's all good. But while I've got your attention here, I might as well show you the best tech and what I am doing. I have here the best tech plugged in, the car's on, and it's on the laptop. And if we come here, you will see, if I can get the mouse over, that it is in fact charging car. So there's 23 minutes left before the battery's full, so it does work with the laptop and you can charge it up, so that's great. The laptop is 130 watt for the laptop. So anyway, let's get on with the rest of the road trip, and I'll do my best to inform you guys on what happened. So like I said, in my haste running through the rain, I forgot to turn the audio back on my recording equipment. So we have here, we're at 49.6 degrees centigrade, and the car is charged up to about 85%. So I thought I'll stop the charge at this point. So also what I decided to do was to give it that 5-minute rest and try and get the battery temperature down a little bit, just to see if we can drop it down by 1 or 2 degrees. So after the 5 minutes was up, I decided to set off. The temperature of the car was 48.7 degrees centigrade, so we lost 0.9 degrees, so we almost lost 1 whole degrees of heat from the car, which should help us along the way a little bit. So the trip between Washington and Wetherby, there's not that much difference in temperature, because the starting battery before charging percent was roughly about the same at 36 and 34%, and the car was still charging at 38 kilowatts. And if you look at the temperature rise, we've got about 10 degrees rise in both, whereas the year before at Wetherby we were only charging at 32 kilowatts with the higher state of charge, and we only gained 5 degrees centigrade. So as I pulled into Trowell, the battery temperature was at 44.7 degrees centigrade, but the problem here was that the left hand charger wasn't working. So in the rain, while I was trying to initiate the charge, it just wasn't going off, so I ended up using the one on the right hand side. The advantage of that was, within the time that it took me to mess around trying to get it to work, which is about 2 minutes I think, we dropped to 44.1 degrees centigrade, so we dropped half a degree, which was quite handy. But that was just enough at 44 degrees to help us pull 32 kilowatts, so it's still quite a respectable speed. We're still talking about 3/4 of the impulse speed of the charge rate for the car, because the car normally pulls at 43 kilowatts, so we were at like 3/4 the speed of the charging. So that was going okay. The only other issue I had concerns about was the low state of charge, because we were down to 28%. So I thought maybe we'll need to stay here for 45 minutes. So after 30 minutes, to my surprise, we were actually up to 71%, and the car was still pulling 31 kilowatts. So I thought I'll check the battery temperature of the car, and it was at 52.6 degrees centigrade. So it's gone up by about 8 degrees. So because we were charging that little bit lower state of charge, and it's still pulling this sort of speed, we were still producing a little bit more heat than last year. So I decided to check on the battery temperature of the car, and we're at the first red line, and I was thinking, wow, that's a little bit high, so might have to change my strategy here for the next part, because by the end of the 40 minutes we were up to 53.3 degrees centigrade, and that is really toasty for the car. But we still haven't actually reached the second red line, so sticking at 65 miles an hour seems like a good way to not reach that second red line. I think if you go any quicker than that, that's when you'll start running into some trouble. So I decided to go after 40 minutes because we were at 82% and we only had about 70 miles left to go to the next service, which was in Milton Keynes. I decided to pack up and head towards the Milton Keynes hub because there's more chance of charging there. Not that Milton Keynes has any lack of infrastructure. So all in all, we gained about 9.2 degrees centigrade on this part of the trip, and overall time we were actually about 50 minutes ahead of schedule, and that is quite a significant amount of time to reduce from the year before. And the fact that I didn't really need to think too much, and I was still overtaking vehicles even at this last point of the trip. The battery temperature wasn't really going down that much, but lucky for us, there was a bit of roadworks and I had to go 50 miles an hour for the last, I think it was about 15-mile stretch. I was down to about 50 miles an hour, and the car temperature, once we started charging at Milton Keynes, was down to 46.7 degrees, and the charge rate we were pulling at 28 kilowatts. I didn't wait around to let the battery cool, I just plugged it into the Polar just to get the speed of the charge rate. And at 28 kilowatts, we're talking about 2/3 of the actual full charging speed of this vehicle, and that is still quite respectable. So we compare this charging speed at 28 kilowatts compared to the old BMS, we're talking about 20 to 21 kilowatts in charge speed, and at half the speed, you do really notice that effect, especially when the time is doubled once you start charging. So after 30 minutes, we actually reached the estimated percent, and we were actually over that. We're up to 81%, which is a little bit higher than I was expecting, which was great. And we're still pulling 24 kilowatts even at this high state of charge. So I was expecting if we needed to go any further, we would only need to maybe charge up for another 5 minutes to get it up to the 85%. So with the new BMS, you can tell at the end of the trip here, you could bounce the temperature between 46 to 53 degrees centigrade and keep that cycle going. I was a little bit worried that there was some sort of like greenhouse effect where it'd run away on us and the temperature will spiral till the car decided to go into turtle mode and not let you charge at the full rate, or at least not let you charge a rapid charger properly. But this doesn't seem to be the case. It looks like with the telematics that everyone's been sending Nissan, they're able to shift the BMS to be a little bit more workable at this sort of like higher temperature. At least with the new update, this gives people the chance to drive at least 350 miles using the old technique that I've adopted last year. And really what they need to do is apply this to North America and in Japan and in Asia, just because I can't see why they wouldn't want to do it. I know people in Japan wouldn't want to complain, and it's not really in their culture to complain about it, so they're most likely not going to be getting the update. But in North America, if you really want this, then you should really make a formal complaint to Nissan and get them to apply the same update to your vehicle. Let's find out next time what happens when I just fly up the M6, M74. It's a 350 mile trip, and we'll see if we can smash the time that we've done now, and we're only doing 3 stops on that one. So until then, I hope you liked this video and found it useful. And if you did like it, please hit the like and subscribe button, and I'll see you guys next time.